The massive black ship drifted through the void like a hungry shadow. Inside its metal belly, creatures of nightmare gathered around a table made of bone and dark crystal. These were the Reapers, beings who had destroyed 1,000 worlds and fed on the fear of dying civilizations. Commander Vexstar stood at the head of the table. His body was tall and thin, covered in armor that seemed to absorb light itself. Where his face should be, there was only darkness with 2 red eyes that burned like dying stars. Around him sat 12 other Death Lords, each one a master of bringing terror to entire star systems. "We have a problem," Vexstar said. His voice echoed through the chamber like wind through a graveyard. "The humans continue to resist us in ways we do not understand." The other Reapers shifted in their seats. For 3,000 years, they had never failed to break a species. Every race they encountered would eventually bow down in fear when death came knocking. But not the humans. Never the humans. Death Lord Morgith leaned forward. "Tell us again about the battle at Proxima Station." Vexstar waved his hand, and images appeared in the air above the table. The hologram showed space filled with Reaper ships surrounding a single human vessel. The human ship was small and damaged, with fires burning along its hull. 12 massive Reaper dreadnoughts had it trapped with no way to escape. "This should have been simple," Vexstar continued. Captain Kim Daeho and his crew were outnumbered and outgunned. Their ship was falling apart. They had no hope of survival. The image zoomed in on the human ship's bridge. There sat Captain Kim, a man with short black hair and tired eyes. His uniform was torn, and blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. Around him, his crew worked at damaged control panels while smoke filled the air. "Watch what happens next," Vexstar said in the hologram. Captain Kim looked up at the massive Reaper ships surrounding him. Then something impossible happened. He began to laugh. Not the laugh of a madman, but the deep, genuine laughter of someone who found the situation funny. "All ships. This is Captain Kim." His voice crackled through the communication system. "Well, this is interesting. 12 against 1. I have to say, I am honored that you think so highly of us." His crew looked at him for a moment. Then Chief Engineer Park Soman started chuckling. "Captain, my engines are held together with prayer and metal tape, but if you want to dance, we can dance." Weapons Officer Li Taeyan grinned as he checked his displays. "Sir, we have enough ammunition for maybe 2 minutes of fighting. Should I save some bullets or use them all at once?" "Use them all," Kim laughed. "If we are going to die today, let us make it worth watching." The Reapers around the table watched as the human ship began moving in ways that should have been impossible. It spun and twisted through space, dodging massive energy beams while firing back with everything it had. The humans were clearly doomed, but they acted like they were having the time of their lives. "Listen to their communications," Vexstar said, and the chamber filled with human voices. "Soman, can you give me more speed?" Kim called out. "Captain, I am already breaking 17 laws of physics." "But sure, why not break a few more?" Park Soman replied, and the engine noise grew louder. "Incoming missiles," reported Navigation Officer Kong Minho. 12 of them. Should I try to dodge?" "Only 12. Li Taeyang laughed. "Yesterday we dodged 20. These Reapers are getting lazy." The Death Lords watched in growing confusion, as the human ship somehow avoided destruction minute after minute. The humans joked and laughed while their ship fell apart around them. They sang old Earth songs while fighting for their lives. "This is impossible," whispered Death Lord Zethkar. "They should be screaming in terror. They should be begging for mercy." "They were losing," Vexstar continued. "Their ship was dying. We had them surrounded. But instead of fear, they gave us laughter. Instead of despair, they gave us joy. And something happened that has never happened before in our history." The hologram showed the moment when everything changed. As the humans laughed and fought, the Reaper ships began to slow down. The Death Lords who commanded them felt strange and weak. Their power, which came from feeding on fear and hopelessness, began to fade. "The human laughter disrupted our feeding," Vexstar explained. "Their joy weakened our strengths. We could not focus, we could not think clearly, and in that moment of confusion, they escaped." The image showed the human ship suddenly breaking free from the trap. It moved through a gap in the Reaper formation and jumped to hyperspace, leaving the 12 massive warships floating uselessly in space. "How did they do this?" asked Death Lord Nethris, the scholar of their group. "We have studied 10,000 species. Fear is universal. All living things fear death." "Not humans," Vexstar said quietly. "They fear death. Yes, but they do something else. They laugh at it. They mock it. They treat it like an old friend who visits too often." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. The Reapers had built their entire civilization on the idea that fear of death was the greatest weapon in the universe. If humans could resist that weapon with laughter, what did that mean for everything they believed? "We need to understand this," Vexstar declared. "Before we face Captain Kim and his kind again, we must learn how they do this thing. How do they laugh when they should weep? How do they find joy when they should find only darkness?" Death Lord Morgith stood up. "What you suggest, Commander? We will study them. We will learn their ways. We will discover the secret of their laughter, Vexter said, and then we will use that knowledge to defeat them once and for all. The other Reapers nodded in agreement. They had no choice. The humans had shown them something new, something they had never encountered in 3,000 years of conquest. If they wanted to continue their mission of harvesting worlds, they needed to understand this strange species that laughed in the face of death. The next time we meet Captain Kim Dae-ho, Vextar concluded, we will be ready. We will know how to handle his laughter. We will know how to break his joy. And when we do, humanity will fall like all the others. But deep in his dark heart, Vexter wondered if that was really true. The humans had surprised them once. Could they do it again? The meeting ended, and the Reapers dispersed to their duties. But the question remained hanging in the air like smoke from a dying fire. How do you defeat an enemy who finds strength in the very thing that should destroy them? Outside the ship, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that somewhere, in the darkness, a species had discovered something that might change the balance of the galaxy forever. The power to laugh at death itself. 3 days after the meeting, in the dark chamber, Deathlord Nethrus stood before a wall of glowing screens in his research laboratory. The Scholar Reaper had spent years studying the species they conquered, but humans puzzled him more than any other race. Nethrus was different from the other Deathlords. While they preferred the screams of battle, he found power in knowledge. His body was thinner than the others, and instead of pure darkness where his face should be, small lights flickered like stars in a night sky. These lights helped him process information faster than any computer. Show me the human data again. He commanded the ship's intelligence system. The screens filled with images of human soldiers, ships, and battles. Nethrus had been collecting this information for 2 years, ever since their first contact with Earth's forces. What he found made no sense according to everything he knew about living creatures. The first screen showed a recording from the Battle of Titan's moon. Human soldiers were trapped in a collapsed bunker with no way out. Poison gas was slowly filling their shelter. They should have been crying and begging for help. Instead, they were telling jokes. Hey Kim, Geneseo, said one soldier to another. Remember when you said this job would be boring? The soldier named Kim Geneseo coughed as the gas reached him, but he still managed to smile. Yeah, well, I also said the food would be better. Turns out I was wrong about everything. The other soldiers laughed, even as they prepared to die. They shared stories about their families back home and made fun of their commanding officers. Bad haircut. When rescue finally came, they were still joking about how the poison gas smelled like their cook's soup. Nethrus moved to the next screen. This one showed Captain Kim Dae-ho's ship during a different battle, months before their encounter at Proxima Station. The human vessel was heavily damaged and running out of power. Enemy missiles were closing in from all directions. Communications Officer Choi Ji-woo to all stations, came a voice from the recording. I have good news and bad news. The good news is that we have enough power for one more jump to hyperspace. The bad news is that I have no idea where we will end up. Could be worse, replied Chief Engineer Park So-min over the intercom. At least we still have coffee in the mess hall. As long as we have coffee, we can survive anything. Wait, interrupted Navigation Officer Kung Min-ho. Did anyone check if the coffee maker survived that last hit? There was a pause. Then everyone on the bridge started laughing. They were about to jump blindly through hyperspace with a damaged ship, possibly ending up inside a star or a black hole, and they were worried about coffee. Priorities, people, Captain Kim said with a chuckle. First we escape death, then we worry about caffeine. The ship made its jump just as the missiles reached their position. They survived, and according to the reports Nethrus had collected, the first thing they did after reaching safety was check on the coffee maker. It had indeed been destroyed, which led to another round of jokes about their terrible luck. Nethrus shook his head in confusion. Every other species he had studied became more desperate and fearful as danger increased. Humans seemed to become more cheerful. It made no sense. He called up another file, this one from a hospital ship during the Battle of New Seoul. Medical Officer Han Yu-jin was treating wounded soldiers while enemy fires shook the entire vessel. The lights kept going out. Medical supplies were running low, and injured humans filled every available space. Dr. Han called out a wounded pilot named Lee Daram. How bad is it? Well, Han, Yu-jin said while bandaging a serious wound, you are definitely not going to win any beauty contests for a while. But on the bright side, you will have great stories to tell at parties. Will I be able to dance? Lee Daram asked. Could you dance before you got hurt? Han Yu-jin replied, no, not really. Then nothing has changed, the doctor said with a straight face. Even the other wounded soldiers started laughing at this exchange. Here they were, possibly dying on a ship under attack, and they were making jokes about dancing. Nethrus had watched this recording dozens of times, and he still could not understand it. The Scholar Reaper moved to his analysis station. He had spent months trying to find a pattern in human behavior. Other species had predictable responses to fear. They would either fight desperately, run away, or freeze in terror. Humans did all of these things too, but they added something else. They laughed. Computer, show me fear response comparisons, Nethris ordered. The screens displayed charts and graphs comparing different species. The Zephyrians of Andromeda became silent when threatened, focusing all their energy on escape. The crystalline beings of Vega grew brighter, using light as both weapon and shield. The treefolk of Centauri released chemical signals that coordinated their entire forest in defense. But humans were different. Their fear response included something no other species had developed. They used humor as a weapon against despair. When things got worse, they joked more. When death seemed certain, they laughed harder. Nethris pulled up a recording of Captain Kim's personal log, something they had intercepted during a communications hack. The human captain was alone in his quarters, speaking to his private recorder. Personal log, day 112 of this tour, Kim said. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. We lost 3 good people today. The war is getting harder, and I know some of us might not make it home. The captain paused, and for a moment, Nethris thought he might finally see a human break down in fear or sadness. Instead, Kim smiled slightly. But you know what? Li Taeyong told the worst joke I have ever heard during dinner tonight. It was so bad that even the food seemed to taste better in comparison. Park Somin laughed so hard she nearly choked on her soup. For a few minutes, we forgot about the war and just enjoyed being alive. Kim leaned back in his chair. My father once told me that you cannot control when you die, but you can control how you live. Maybe that is what we are really fighting for. Not just to stay alive, but to stay human. To keep laughing even when the universe gives us every reason to cry. The recording ended, and Nethris stared at the blank screen. This was the key, he realized. Humans did not laugh because they were not afraid. They laughed because they were afraid. They used humor to transform their fear into something else, something that made them stronger instead of weaker. Other species fought death by avoiding it or denying it. Humans fought death by accepting it and then refusing to let it steal their joy. They knew they would die eventually, so they decided to live fully until that moment came. Nethris began preparing his report for Commander Vector. The Reapers had always believed that fear of death was their greatest weapon, but humans had found a way to use that same fear as fuel for their own strength. They had turned the Reapers' weapon against them. This was bigger than just one troublesome captain and his crew. This was a fundamental challenge to everything the Reapers believed about conquest and control. If humans could teach other species this technique, if they could spread their philosophy of laughing at death, it could change the entire galaxy. The Scholar Reaper finished his analysis and sent it to the command center. Soon Vexstar would have to make a decision. How do you defeat an enemy that has weaponized joy itself? Outside his laboratory, the Great Reaper ship continued its journey through the void, but now it carried a new understanding of their human enemies. The creatures they had thought were simply stubborn were actually something much more dangerous. They were teachers, showing the galaxy a new way to face the darkness. And that terrified the Reapers more than any weapon ever could. Commander Vexstar stood in the center of the transformation chamber, watching as his best infiltrator prepared for the most dangerous mission in Reaper history. Kethmal lay on a table made of living metal while machines worked to change his very structured. Kethmal was younger than the other Deathlords, created only 500 years ago. Unlike his elders, he could adapt his form and mind to mimic other species. The Reapers had used this ability to spy on their enemies before, but never for so long or so deeply. The process is almost complete, announced the bioengineer working. The machines, Kethmo will look, sound, and even smell human. His new identity is Dr. Yoon Jae-seok, a xenobiologist from Earth Colony 7. Vexstar watched as his agent's dark armor dissolved away, replaced by pale human skin. The burning red eyes became brown and soft. Black hair grew from his scalp, and his tall frame shortened to human proportions. Within an hour, a perfect human male lay on the table. Remember your mission, Vexstar said as Kethmal sat up and examined his new hands. You must learn how humans create their laughter weapon. Find their weakness. Discover why they do not fear death as they should. Keth nodded, testing his new voice. It sounded strange to hear human words coming from what had once been his agent. I understand. Commander, the research vessel Horizon's Promise will dock at Station Beta 7 tomorrow. I will join their crew as planned. Do not forget what you are. Vexstar warned. You may look human, but you are still a Reaper. Do not let their strange ways corrupt your purpose. 24 hours later, Dr. Yoon Jae-seok walked aboard the human research vessel. The ship was smaller than Reaper craft, built for comfort rather than intimidation. The walls were painted in soft colors, and plants grew in small gardens throughout the corridors. It felt more like a home than a military vessel. Dr. Yoon called a cheerful voice. A human woman approached him with a bright smile. I am Dr. Bae Soo-jin, the behavioral psychologist. Welcome to our little floating laboratory. Kethmal studied her through his human eyes. Dr. Bae was shorter than him, with long black hair tied back in a simple style. Her face showed no fear, no suspicion, only genuine happiness at meeting someone new. This already confused him. How could she be so trusting of a stranger? Thank you, Kethmol replied, still getting used to his human voice. I am excited to work with your team. Come on, let me show you around and introduce you to everyone, Dr. Bay said, leading him down a corridor lined with research labs. Their first stop was the engineering section, where they met Dr. Nam Hasyok, a military strategist studying Reaper tactics. The man was examining holographic displays of battle formations while eating something that smelled sweet. Nam, this is our new xenobiologist, Dr. Bay announced. Dr. Nam looked up from his work and grinned. Welcome aboard. Want some chocolate? I always think better when I am eating something that is bad for me. Kethmol accepted the small brown square, not knowing what else to do. When he tasted it, his human taste buds were flooded with sensations. He had never experienced the sweetness was overwhelming but somehow pleasant. Good, right? Dr. Nam laughed at the expression on Kethmol's face. My wife sends me care packages. She says I need to remember what I am fighting for. As they continued the tour, Kethmol met more of the crew. Dr. Park Jinwoo, the ship's physicist, was trying to solve an equation while juggling 3 rubber balls. When one ball hit him in the head, he laughed and started over. Dr. Lee Moran, the communications officer, was teaching the ship's computer to tell jokes in 17 different languages. Why do humans do these things? Kethmol asked Dr. Bay when they were alone in the observation lounge. What things? She replied, settling into a comfortable chair by a large window that looked out at the stars. The chocolate, the juggling, the jokes, these activities do not help you fight the war or advance your research. Dr. Bay considered this question seriously. I suppose they help us remember who we are. The war has been going on for 3 years now. It would be easy to become like our enemies, focused only on death and destruction. But we choose to hold on to the things that make us human, even when those things might get you killed. Kethmol, pressed, especially then, she said with a small smile. What good is surviving if you lose everything that made life worth living in the first place? Over the following weeks, Kethmol observed the human crew as they went about their daily routines. He watched Dr. Nam spend his free time writing letters to his family, even though the mail system was unreliable during wartime. He saw Dr. Park organize movie nights where the crew would gather to watch old Earth films and share bowls of popcorn. The strangest thing was how they handled problems. When the ship's food processor broke down, leaving them with only emergency rations, the crew turned it into a game. They competed to see who could make the tastiest meal from the boring supplies, laughing as they created dishes with names like mystery meat, surprise, and cardboard casserole. When a solar storm damaged their communications array, Dr. Lee Miran made jokes about being fashionably late to their next check-in with headquarters. As she crawled through maintenance tunnels to fix the damage, she kept up a running commentary that had the whole crew laughing over the intercom. Why do you not panic? Kethmol asked her when she emerged, covered in grease and dust. Panic never fixed anything, she replied, wiping her hands on a towel. Besides, being upset would just make a bad situation worse. Better to find something to laugh about. The most confusing incident happened during their 3rd week together. The ship encountered a field of unstable quantum energy that threatened to tear them apart at the atomic level. As alarms blared and the hull shook violently, Kethmol expected the humans to react with terror. Instead, Dr. Park started taking bets on whether they would be turned into cosmic soup or universal dust. Dr. Nam suggested they should at least try to become premium stardust if they were going to die. Even as they worked frantically to escape the danger, they kept making jokes about their situation. We might discover what comes after death, Dr. Bay said calmly as she worked at her console. That would be quite a research breakthrough. I hope the afterlife has better coffee than this ship, replied Dr. Limi-Randot. They escaped the quantum field through skilled piloting and quick thinking. But Kethmol was left shaken by what he had witnessed. These humans had faced certain death and responded with curiosity and humor. They had not been pretending to be brave. They had genuinely found their situation interesting rather than terrifying. That night, Kethmol sat alone in his quarters, staring out at the stars. For the first time in his existence, he began to question everything he had been taught about the nature of life and death. The humans were not broken or insane. They had found something that his people had missed entirely. They had learned to find joy in existence itself, regardless of how long that existence might last. Instead of spending their lives in fear of death, they chose to spend death approaching them while they were busy living. Kethmol realized he was beginning to understand the human paradox, but understanding it and knowing how to defeat it were 2 very different things. The more time he spent with these humans, the more he wondered if defeating them was even possible, or if it was something the Reapers should want to do at all. The attack came without warning during the ship's night cycle. Kethmol woke to the sound of alarms and the feeling of the vessel shaking under weapons fire. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red as he stumbled from his quarters, still adjusting to how his human body moved during crisis. All hands to emergency stations. Dr. Bay's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Kethmol made his way to the bridge, where he found the crew working frantically at their stations. Through the main viewing screen, he could see 3 ships firing energy weapons at the horizon's promise. They were not Reaper vessels, but sleek black craft that moved like hunting animals. Pirates, Dr. Nam said grimly as he analyzed the attacking ships. The Red Claw Gang. From the looks of their configuration, they must think we are carrying valuable research materials. Can we outrun them? Asked Dr. Park Jinwoo from the navigation station. Not with our current engine damage, replied Chief Engineer Oh Sehun, a young man who had joined the crew just 2 weeks earlier. That first attack hit our main power coupling. We are running on backup systems. The ship shuddered again as more weapons fire struck their hull. Sparks flew from damaged control panels and the lights flickered. Kethmil could smell smoke and burning circuits in the air. Hull breach in Section 7, reported Dr. Lee Miran. Emergency barriers are holding, but we are losing atmosphere. Dr. Bay looked around at her crew. Options, we can try to fight, Dr. Nam said, checking their weapons systems, but we only have basic defensive armaments. We are a research vessel, not a warship. Or we can surrender and hope they just take our supplies without killing us, added Dr. Park. Another impact rocked the ship, this one stronger than the others. The lights went out completely for several seconds before the emergency power kicked in. When the systems came back online, new alarms were sounding. That hit took out life support to sections 5 through 8, Oh Sehun reported. And we have a toxic gas leak in Section 6. The automatic systems are trying to contain it, but anyone caught in that area. He did not need to finish the sentence. Kethmil could see the fear in the young engineer's eyes, though the human was trying to hide it. I am in Section 6, called out veteran pilot Song Mayung over the intercom. Her voice was strained. My leg is pinned under some debris, and I can smell the gas. It is getting thicker. Dr. Bay stood up immediately. I am going to get her. The gas will kill you before you reach her, Dr. Nam warned. The concentration is too high. Then we need to find another way, Dr. Bay replied. But before anyone could respond, another explosion shook the ship. This time, the damage was severe. Control panels exploded in showers of sparks, and a support beam crashed down, blocking the main corridor. Emergency power is failing. Oh, Sehun announced. We have maybe 10 minutes before total system shutdown. Kethmil found himself trapped in a side corridor with Oh Sehun and Dr. Lee Miran when the beam fell. The toxic gas was beginning to seep into their section, and he could feel his borrowed human lungs beginning to burn. Oh Sehun slumped against the wall, blood running from a cut on his forehead. Well, he said with a weak smile, this is not how I planned to spend my Tuesday. Dr. Lee Miran checked her communication device, but it was damaged. Looks like we are stuck here for a while, she said, surprisingly calm for someone facing death. Kethmil expected them to panic, to cry, to beg for rescue. Instead, Oh Sehun started laughing softly. You know what the funny thing is? The young engineer said, yesterday I was complaining about the food in the mess hall. I said the soup tasted like engine coolant. Now I would give anything for a bowl of that terrible soup. Dr. Lee Miran chuckled despite their situation. My grandmother used to make soup that was even worse. She would put vegetables in it that I swear she found growing behind the garbage disposal. Your grandmother sounds like a terrible cook. Oh, Sehun replied. The worst. Dr. Lee Miran agreed. But she always said that food tastes better when you share it with people you love. Even bad food. Kethmil listened to them talk as the gas grew thicker. These humans were dying, and they were sharing stories about bad cooking. It made no sense to his Reaper mind, but somehow it felt important. What about you, Dr. Yoon? Oh Sehun asked. Any terrible family recipes you want to share before we become space dust? Kethmil hesitated. He had no family, no grandmother, no memories of shared meals. But looking at these two humans, he felt something he had never experienced before, a desire to connect, to be part of their strange ritual of facing death with stories and laughter. My father once tried to cook for me when I was young, Kethmil said, surprising himself by creating a false memory that felt somehow true. He burned everything. The smoke alarm went off, and the neighbors thought the house was on fire. Oh Sehun and Dr. Lee Miran both laughed at this, and Kethmil felt a warm feeling in his chest that had nothing to do with the toxic gas. Did you eat it anyway? Dr. Lee Miran asked. Yes, Kethmil replied. It was the worst meal I ever had, but also, somehow, the best. He continued talking as the gas slowly filled their section. Oh Sehun told them about his first girlfriend, who had broken up with him by text message during his graduation ceremony. Dr. Lee Miran shared the story of her worst job interview, where she had accidentally called the interviewer by his ex-name 3 times. Each story was followed by laughter, even as their breathing became more difficult. Kethmil began to understand what was happening. These humans were not denying death or ignoring it. They were choosing to fill their final moments with connection and joy rather than fear and despair. You know what? Oh Sehun said, as he started coughing more frequently. If I have to die today, I am glad I get to die with friends. Same here, Dr. Lee Miran agreed. though I really hoped to finish that novel I was reading first. For the first time in his existence, Kethmel felt what humans called peace. The Paplet. Approaching death no longer seemed like a terrible ending, but like a natural part of the story. These humans had taught him that how you die is less important than how you live. Just as consciousness began to fade, the sound of cutting tools echoed. Through the corridor, rescue teams had reached them, using emergency equipment to cut through the fallen beam. Fresh air flooded in as they were pulled to safety. As medical teams worked on Osehun and Dr. Lee Moran, Kethmel sat quietly in the medical bay. He was alive, but something inside him had changed forever. He had experienced what humans called mortality, and instead of finding it terrifying, he had found it meaningful. The Reaper agent realized he had learned the secret his people wanted to know, but now he was not sure he could use it against them. 2 days after the pirate attack, Kethmel stood in the ship's medical bay watching Dr. Lee Moran work on repairing damaged equipment. His human disguise was failing. The stress from the toxic gas exposure had weakened the biomedic systems, and small patches of his true Reaper form were beginning to show through. "Dr. Yoon, are you feeling all right?" Dr. Bae Sujin asked as she entered the medical bay. "Your skin looks different today." Kethmel turned to face her, and he saw her eyes widen in shock. The brown human eyes she had known were now flickering. Between brown and red, his skin was showing dark patches that moved like liquid shadow. "You are not human," Dr. Bae said quietly, backing toward the door. Before Kethmel could respond, Dr. Lee Moran looked up from her work. She saw his changing appearance and immediately activated the ship's internal alarm system. "Security alert." Her voice echoed through the corridors. "Possible hostile infiltrator in medical bay. All senior staff report immediately." Within minutes, the medical bay was surrounded by the ship's crew. Dr. Nam Hoseok arrived with the ship's only weapon, a small energy pistol used for emergency situations. Dr. Park Ginwoo sealed the exits while Osehun monitored the situation from the bridge. "What do you?" Dr. Bae asked. Though her voice was steady despite her obvious fear, Kethmel felt his disguise continued to dissolve. His human appearance faded away completely, revealing his true Reaper form. The crew stepped back as they saw his tall, dark figure and burning red eyes. "I am Kethmel of the Death Lords," he said in his real voice, which echoed strangely in the small room. "I am what you call a Reaper." Dr. Nam raised his weapon, but Dr. Bae held up her hand to stop him. "Wait, if he wanted to kill us, he could have done it weeks ago. Why reveal yourself now?" Kethmel looked at the faces around him. These humans had become something he never expected. They had become his friends. The thought surprised him, as Reapers did not have friends. They had allies and enemies. But friendship was a concept he had only learned from humans. "My disguise is failing," he admitted. "And I find that I do not wish to lie to you anymore." "Why were you spying on us?" Dr. Park asked. "My people sent me to learn the secret of human laughter. We do not understand how you use joy as a weapon against death. We wanted to find your weakness so we could defeat you." Dr. Bae studied his face, looking for signs of deception. "And what did you learn?" Kethmel was quiet for a long moment. "I learned that you do not use laughter as a weapon. You use it as a way to stay connected to life, even when death is near. You choose joy because the alternative is to let fear control you." "That is correct," Dr. Bae said. "But knowing that, will you use it against us?" Before Kethmel could answer, Oh Se-hun's voice came over the intercom. "Dr. Bae, we have bigger problems. A large ship just dropped out of hyperspace. It is broadcasting a message demanding that we surrender the Reaper infiltrator." Through the medical bay's small window, they could see a massive black vessel that dwarfed their research ship. It was clearly a Reaper warship, bristling with weapons and radiating the dark energy that his people used to spread fear. "That would be Captain Kim Dae-ho," Dr. Nam said grimly as he checked the ship's identification. "His vessel is called the Laughing Defiance. He has been hunting Reaper infiltrators for months." Kethmel felt a chill that had nothing to do with his failing disguise. Kim Dae-ho was the human who had escaped from 12 Reaper dreadnoughts, the one whose laughter had confused and weakened his people's forces. If anyone could see through Reaper deceptions, it would be him. "We surrender the infiltrator willingly," Dr. Bae announced over the communication system. "Permission to come aboard for prisoner transfer." An hour later, Kethmel found himself in the docking bay of the Laughing Defiance, surrounded by human soldiers who watched him with curious rather than fearful eyes. The ship was larger than the research vessel, built for military operations, but it still had the comfortable feeling of a human home. Captain Kim Dae-ho entered the docking bay with his senior staff. Kethmel recognized Chief Engineer Park So-man and Weapons Officer Lee Tae-yang from the recordings he had studied. There were also new faces. Tactical Officer Lim Dae-yoon and Chief Science Officer Rutel. Seong-ho. Kim was shorter than Kethmel had expected, with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes. He did not look like a mighty warrior. He looked like someone's friendly uncle. But when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had faced death many times and chosen to laugh instead. "So, Kim said, walking slowly around Keth, like he was examining an interesting specimen. You are the Reaper who has been living among humans for weeks. Tell me, what did you think of us? You are not what we expected, Kethmo replied honestly. And what did you expect? Fear, desperation, the normal responses of creatures facing extinction. Kim chuckled. Sorry to disappoint you. We gave up normal responses a long time ago. Normal responses get you killed in this war. Why do you laugh when you should be afraid? Kethmo asked. Kim gestured for everyone to sit down on nearby crates and supply boxes, turning the interrogation into something more like a conversation. Let me tell you a story, Kim said. When I was young, my father was a soldier named Wang Jita. He fought in the border wars against the Centauri pirates. One day, his unit was surrounded and outnumbered 10-1. They had no food, no ammunition, and no hope of rescue. Kim paused to accept a cup of coffee from Park Soman, who had quietly prepared drinks for everyone, including Keth. My father's commanding officer wanted to surrender. He said fighting was pointless when they were all going to die anyway. But my father stood up and said something I will never forget. He said that since they were all going to die, they might as well die doing something interesting. What did they do? Kethmo asked, finding himself genuinely curious about the story. They decided to have fun, Kim replied with a grin. They made jokes about their situation. They sang songs. They played card games with ammunition as stakes. And while they were busy enjoying themselves, they also fought like demons. They held their position for 3 days until reinforcements arrived. Kim sipped his coffee and looked directly at Kethmo. Only 2 men from that unit survived. My father was one of them. He taught me that you cannot control when you die, but you can control how you live. We choose to live with joy, even in the darkest times. Your people feed on fear and despair, Lim Dayun added, but humans learned long ago that fear and despair are choices. We can choose something else. What will you do with me? Kethmo asked. Kim considered this question. Seriously, that depends. Will you go back to your people and tell them how to defeat us? Kethmo thought about everything he had experienced over the past weeks. The taste of chocolate, the warmth of friendship, the peace he had felt while facing death with Oh Se-hun and Dr. Lee Miran. I do not think I can, he said finally. I do not think I want to. Then welcome to the war, Kim said, extending his hand. But this time, you will be fighting on the right side. As Kethmo shook the human's hand, he realized that his infiltration mission had succeeded in a way his commanders never intended. He had learned the secret of human strength. But instead of using it to destroy them, he wanted to become part of it. The Reaper who had come to study laughter had learned to laugh himself. 3 weeks after Kethmo joined Captain Kim's crew, the moment everyone had been preparing for finally arrived. The Reaper fleet emerged from hyperspace above the human colony of New Bustan, like a dark storm covering the sky. Commander Vex led the assault personally, commanding a force of 50 warships from his flagship, the Eternal Darkness. This time, the Reapers came prepared. They had developed new psychic dampeners designed to neutralize human laughter and reduce inside its power to disrupt their fear-feeding abilities. On the bridge of the Laughing Defiance, Captain Kim watched the enemy fleet take formation above the colony. His ship was part of a small defense force that included 12 human vessels and 2 allied ships from species that had learned to resist Reaper tactics. Well, Kim said to his crew, it looks like Vexter decided to bring some friends to the party. 50 ships against 14, reported Tactical Officer Lim Dayun. I have seen better odds, but I have also seen worse. Chief Engineer Park Soman checked her systems. All weapons are ready, Captain. Engines are running at full power. We are as ready as we will ever be. Kethmo stood at a special station Kim had created for him. The former Reaper agent wore a modified human uniform, but his true form was visible to everyone. The crew had accepted him completely, though it had taken some time to get used to having a Death Lord fighting alongside them. Kethmel, can you tell us anything about their new equipment? Kim asked. The psychic dampeners will reduce the effect of human laughter by about 60%, Kethmal explained, but they have never been tested against a full human battle fleet. My people may have underestimated how much laughter you can produce when you work together. Kim activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Captain Kim. Today the Reapers learned that humans are not afraid to share our joy with the entire galaxy. On the colony below, Mayor Chen Sora was coordinating the civilian evacuation while Defense Coordinator Yu Dongwook prepared the planetary defense systems. But instead of panic, the colony was filled with an estranged kind of celebration. The colonists had decided that if this was going to be their last day, they would make it memorable. Street musicians played upbeat songs while families shared picnic meals in the parks. Children drew pictures of spaceships and gave them to the defense soldiers for good luck. The battle began when the Reaper fleet launched their first wave of attacks. Energy beams struck the human ships, but instead of the usual screams of terror that accompanied their assaults, the Reapers heard something else entirely. This is Communications Officer Choi Ji-woo. To all human vessels, came a voice. Over the fleet network, I am starting a music request show. What would everyone like to hear while we fight for our lives? How about something with a good beat? Replied the captain of the destroyer Happy Warrior. I like to dance while I shoot at bad guys. Classical music for me, added the cruiser Stubborn Hope. Nothing says elegant warfare like a good symphony. Soon, the entire human fleet was broadcasting music across all frequencies. The Reapers found their communication systems flooded with everything from ancient earth rock songs to traditional Korean folk music. But the humans were not finished. As the battle intensified, Captain Kim activated a plan he had been developing. With Kethmela's help, all ships begin cultural bombardment protocol, Kim announced. The human vessels stopped trying to jam Reaper communications and instead began broadcasting on every frequency they could access. But instead of military chatter or surrender demands, they filled the void with something the Reapers had never encountered: pure human culture. Dr. Bae Soo-jin, now serving as the fleet's communication specialist, coordinated the broadcast from the research vessel Horizon's Promise. Poetry readings mixed with cooking shows, stand-up comedy routines alternated with children's lullabies. Amateur musicians performed alongside professional orchestras. The colonists on New Busan joined the effort. Mayor Chen Sora organized a planet-wide talent show, broadcast live to the Reaper fleet. Families shared stories about their ancestors, artists explained their paintings, grandmothers taught traditional recipes while explosions lit up the sky overhead. On the Reaper flagship, Commander Vexstar watched in growing confusion as his psychic dampeners proved useless against this new form of attack. The humans were not just laughing at death anymore, they were celebrating life so loudly and completely that it drowned out everything else. Commando reported one of his Death Lords. Our crews are becoming distracted by the human broadcasts. Some are actually stopping their attacks to listen to the music. Vexstar could not understand what was happening. The humans were showing the Reapers everything they were trying to destroy. They were revealing the beauty, creativity, and joy that would be lost if the galaxy fell to darkness. Kethmel's voice suddenly appeared on the Reaper command frequency. His former colleagues heard him speaking in their own language, but his words carried something new. My brothers, Kethmel said, I have lived among the humans for weeks. I have seen what we are truly fighting. We are not battling soldiers or weapons. We are fighting the very concept of joy itself. Traitor, Vexter replied. You have been corrupted by their weakness. No, Kethmel responded. I have been strengthened by their wisdom. Listen to what they are showing us. This is what exists in the galaxy beyond fear and death. This is what we have been missing for 3,000 years. As if to emphasize his point, the human broadcasts shifted to something new. Instead of just sharing their own culture, they began telling stories about other species they had met. They spoke of the crystal beings of Andromeda and their beautiful light sculptures. They described the tree folk of Centauri and their songs that could heal wounded forests. The humans were not just defending themselves. They were defending the entire galaxy's right to exist in joy rather than fear. On his flagship, Vexter felt something he had never experienced before. For just a moment, listening to a human child sing a simple song about friendship, he remembered what it felt like to exist without the constant hunger for fear and despair. All Reaper vessels, he announced slowly, cease firing. The battle stopped. 50 massive warships hung in space above New Busan, no longer attacking but not yet retreating. In the silence that followed, a new voice joined the communications network. It was Osean, the young engineer from the research vessel, speaking directly to the Reaper fleet. We know you feed on fear and sadness, he said, but what if you did not have to? What if there was another way to exist? What if you could learn to feed on joy instead? The offer hung in space like a bridge between two different ways of understanding the universe. Some Reapers, like Kethmel, were ready to cross that bridge. Others, bound by thousands of years of tradition, were not yet ready to change. But for the first time in their long history, the Reapers had been offered something other than conquest or destruction. They had been offered the chance to learn, to grow, and to become something new. Commander Vexstar looked at the human colony below, where the celebration was still continuing despite the massive fleet overhead. Children were still drawing pictures. Musicians were still playing songs. Families were still sharing meals together. Perhaps, he said quietly to himself, it is time for the Reapers to learn how to live instead of just how to harvest death. The war was not over, but for the first time in 3,000 years, it had paused long enough for both sides to consider what they were really fighting for. And in that pause, the sound of human laughter echoed across the stars, not as a weapon, but as an invitation to join the eternal celebration of being alive.